Alright guys, so this is Charlie and Dylan. They're from a mobile app company called Chronos. So they built Stanford grads and talk to you about their work there. Basically, they designed an app that tracks how you spend your time and allows you to make actual decisions based on how you spend your time, whether it's good decisions, bad decisions, etc., etc. So I'll tell you more about that. They'll also tell you kind of their personal stories, how they came from much bigger companies and very prestigious jobs into a small startup that they now both run together.
Cool, yeah, so my name's Charlie. I grew up around here, went to high school in San Mateo. And before doing Chronos, I was working at Pandora during college for a couple years, and also at Google after that for a couple years on the calendar team. Went to grad school at Stanford. I met Dylan there, and we graduated about a year ago and launched Chronos sort of the day after graduation.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the Northeast. Went to Stanford undergrad, did mechanical engineering, which was more kind of physical side of things, a little bit of robotics. Went to New York, did something very different, did consulting for a couple of years, came back to grad school, met Charlie, and then been working on Chronos full time for almost a year now. Yeah, so kind of like Robin was saying, basically the thought behind the product was we both got to this point where we feel like we get to the end of the week, get to Friday, feel like we've been really busy, doing a lot, and not actually know where our time went. And so we started talking to people and realized that in general, people recognize that time is the most valuable resource. They know, yeah, I want to spend more time with my family and friends, more time exercising, more time sleeping. But then you ask people, where do your 160 hours in a week actually go? People are usually actually really bad at adding those up. Like they don't know how many hours they actually spend sleeping or commuting or exercising. And the challenge was if you wanted to do that in the past, typically that's like a very manual process. You're, keeping an Excel spreadsheet and recording everything you do. And it just requires a lot of work. And we've seen that even on like Foursquare, checking in is too much effort for a lot of users. So our kind of tack on that was saying, hey, you have this device on your body 24 hours a day that has accelerometer data, has location data, has all these other sensors. Can we pull that in passively and then do all the work on our part so that you don't actually have to do anything? And so basically the way it works now is we pull in your location data kind of intermittently. So once every 8 minutes we'll ping the GPS, Wi-Fi, cell triangulation, whatever is the most convenient and power efficient. Pull in your data point, send that up to our servers, bundle that all together, put that on top of Google, Foursquare, figure out where your most likely location is, and then also figure out if you're there with friends. Because if you have a friend on the service, we can see that the two of you arrived together and left together. And then we bundle that all together and say, hey, here's what your week looks like, here's what your categories are, and then we also let you set goals against that and say, hey, I want to sleep more, exercise more, leave work by 5 every day. So that's kind of the general idea of the product. And then the big thing for us kind of in terms of shaping it was that we initially came with this thesis of passive makes sense just because the interaction that most people have with their smartphones is you pull out your phone, you spend all day looking at it, you go out to like lunch with friends and you're tweeting and Instagramming and checking in and you're spending more time looking at the phone than the person across the table. And so our tack was saying that like, over time, we're moving towards a place where we have to ultimately put the phone down and where your interaction with it is going to be passive, where you are going to take advantage of all the sensors that are built into it, and then we're going to do 80 or 90% of the work without having to do anything at all. And so this is kind of like our first step in that direction. And we're trying to figure out exactly right now what is the balance between completely automated and not completely automated, but our general hunch is the more we can go in that direction, the better. Yeah, and so in terms of like what the product itself, so we launched kind of an alpha version of it last September, and since then we've been, our basic philosophy has been get something out there as quickly as possible, just because it's very, very hard for us sitting in a room without talking to people to know what people actually want. I think particularly in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, and particularly if your friends are all people that are like into technology and like kind of geeky, it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, they love this is a cool idea, I love this too. And then you realize that 99% of the people in the world don't care for it at all, or it's not helpful for them. And so for us, the biggest thing has just been getting stuff out very, very quickly, even if it's broken, even if it's buggy, and letting people interact with it. And they can say, this is stupid, this is awful, we hate this, or this one little thing is cool, why don't you work more on that? And that kind of helps us guide our development path and our product roadmap and figure out what is actually more likely to be successful down the road. So we launched something in September, and since then we've been kind of iterating, and then the plan is basically to do a big relaunch at the end of this, basically at the end of this month. Yeah, next month. There we go.
So yeah, if you guys have any questions about sort of either launching a company or raising money or what challenges we've seen, or we can also just riff about
various
company
things.
stuff.
New season of Arrested Development.
What's the money raising process been like? I know it's
Yeah.
never easy for anybody.
Yeah, raising money is a terrible thing to have to do. I really think both of us are just, anyone I've talked to, any entrepreneur, it's sort of this necessary evil that you have to go through because most companies, unless you're making money right out of the gate, you're going to have to raise some money, but it goes against a lot of the things you originally started the company for. So imagine you start this company, you work really hard, you launch a product, you start to see this initial traction, and that's actually, when you start getting those users, is probably the ideal time to raise money, or right before that. But at the same time, you're an entrepreneur and you build this product, and the reason you built a product is because you want people using it and you want to be able to respond to users and iterate and keep developing this product as soon as people have started using it. And so it's sort of an unfortunate timing where you have to sort of prioritize different things you might naturally want to. So for us, raising money, talked to sort of a handful of people between, I guess, October and December. And you get a lot of sort of thumbs up and sounds great and let's keep chatting. And so it's a lot of these sort of false positives because then you only get, in our case we're lucky we end up getting a couple checks and raise some cash. But it can be tough on your spirit to keep keep pitching what's been your dream and it's so clear to you why this is valuable and why people should invest in it. And then get positive feedback, but then not sort of get that final step of the check being signed.
Yeah, and the challenge is like if you're an investor, your incentive is always to delay as long as possible because you want to remove as much risk as you possibly can. And so what you never want to do is say no because there's absolutely no benefit for you for saying no. I mean, maybe generally your reputation gets a little bit better, but you want to go in there and say, this is awesome, we love this is really cool, keep it up, let's talk a month from now. And so a lot of it is creating this false sense of urgency, somehow convincing these people that unless they join you right now and unless they back you right now, everything is going to close and they won't have the opportunity to do that a week from now. And the problem is like 99% of the time there isn't really a sense of urgency. It really is something that you're kind of manufacturing. And just like Charlie was saying, the best thing to do is like right before a launch or right before some big publicity event or right before something that they think is going to change the trajectory of the company. And telling them that if you don't do it now, if you wait till after this event, it's going to be 5 times as expensive or 10 times as expensive, or you won't have the opportunity to get in. And yeah, I think the big thing for us too there was just realizing like, the power of the network, and that yeah, it's great to build the best product in the world, but there are a lot of people that can build great products and are wonderful engineers, but if you can't actually talk to the right people, it becomes very hard. If you have 1 million users, then maybe you can talk to them, but if it's just trying to talk to someone an idea and the strength of a team, really have to get in front of them in the first place. And so for us, it was kind of realizing the value of starting those relationships very early on and building that network and actually maintaining it. And so a lot of that is having multiple conversations with people over the course of a couple of months or over the course of a year and saying, hey, I'm just pitching an idea, like I'm not really like looking for investment right now, quote unquote, but you're just kind of, bouncing someone off of someone, getting their feedback, kind of almost approaching them as a mentor. 6 months later, be like, hey, I know we talked last time, look at all this cool progress I made, isn't that great? 3 months further down the road, oh, by the way, we're thinking about really launching to the public soon. You've seen these data points, how I've progressed along the way. And at that point, like the investor can actually start to string a story together and say, cool, I saw that you started with an idea, you now have a product, you now have some users, and I can see that you've been able to build stuff pretty quickly and execute. Now I can actually believe in you and put money in there. Whereas if you sit down and just have like a 45-minute coffee meeting, there are some people that are just insanely wealthy and will think about giving you money, but more often than not, the investor is going to walk out of that and be like, I have no idea whether you're just really well spoken or whether you're actually, making progress in like a discernible pattern.
Is there like, how was the idea proposed? Was there like a story behind the inspiration, or was it kind of just happen?
Yeah, so we started off, we went to grad school together and we actually took a class that was sort of this entrepreneurship type class. And both went to grad school with this idea of like we want to start our own company out of school. And so our grad program was 2 years, which was summer before we took this class. Both of us had ideas about companies that we thought we would like to start. And there were some overlaps, we were pretty different companies. And we came together both sort of under the shared theory of both wanting to start a company in this sort of very general space. And so the sort of the ideation phase of it was actually taking our ideas, figuring out what the overlap was, figuring out sort of what we're really trying to do here, what sort of the core thesis is, and then talking to actual people, just literally walking around campus and saying, how do you think about your time? How do you prioritize your time? When you wake up in the morning, do you write things down, or do you have a digital calendar? Asking these sort of practical questions, and then making prototypes off of that, and then showing people these prototypes and say, well, do you use something like this? And so sort of taking sort of a very sort of 30,000 feet above approach, having some idea of what the sort of core thesis is behind it, and then actually talking to people and trying to drill down exactly what that looks like and exactly how best to solve the initial problem we saw.
I think one inclination a lot of people have early on is to like protect their idea and be like, oh, the idea is valuable, which is like not true at all. Because like there's literally no idea which the idea itself is valuable, because if that's what it is, that's a terrible competitive advantage, because like the idea is very easily transferable. And like an idea is different than like having a patent on something, but just like my idea is I'm going to build like a social networking site that uses like credit cards to link people up. Like great, but like that is not a company in itself. You actually have to do something there. And I think a lot of inclination is to hold that idea and not tell anyone and kind of build something secretly. And really, I think a much better approach is I have an idea, let's bounce it off people, let's hear feedback, let's see if this is something someone actually wants. And the reason my company is going to be valuable is because I can execute on that. And I can, the parts that I'm really going to contribute are the parts around how the user experience feels, or how the design feels, or how other elements of the site come together. And less about the fact that, I'm just doing something with credit cards and social networking.
Like find what the people want from you, like actually.
Yeah, or wait. I mean, and part of it too is you can figure something out that like only a small percentage of people want this now, but I can see more people wanting in the future. Like I think there's always this challenge of like, there's all these like things of like design what people don't know what they want, but will need in the future, right? Versus design what they want right now. I think you're a higher likelihood of success if you can design something that people want right now, just because they want it right now and you're not shaping the market. I think if you're like Apple and you have millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars to spend advertising and getting stuff out there, it's a little bit easier to be like designing for the future. And then again, I think you can also say that there's different types of people and different types of markets. So you can probably design for the future of America by designing for a lot of people in Silicon Valley right now. Like people are in like middle America are not necessarily driving Teslas right now, but you can at least design for the small percentage of people in Palo Alto that want to drive one. And eventually, over time, that's the kind of thing that can migrate to a broader set.
I think too, as far as the idea goes, it depends what your personality is like. You're going to be spending a lot of time and effort and sort of sweat invested in this, and so make sure it is something that you're passionate about. And it's one thing to see a market opening for rabbit food, but if you don't care about it, it's going to be tough when you're a month, 2 months, 6 months down the line, and if you find yourself working on something you don't care about, it's going to be really, it doesn't make sense for most people to really keep pursuing that. So make sure that you have sort of some inherent passion about what it is you start working on.
Especially for
Yeah.
$1 billion market, it's like they multiply quickly. You can just like see that chart.
What's been like a low point and a high point in the company? The low point.
The low point first. I'd say, raising money was really frustrating. We got this launch at this TechCrunch conference, and so we got a lot of initial users, and we got good press, and a lot of people giving thumbs up and saying they liked it, and then sort of took that inertia into fundraising, and then also, like I was saying, got a lot of people saying, this is great, this is really cool, let's keep talking, and realizing it's like we both just finished school and have bills to pay and all kinds of things stacking up where we had bootstrapped the company and so weren't making any money for the first 6 months of the company, and realized we had, by the time we actually got the checks, there was like maybe 6 weeks left. If we didn't get any cash, we probably wouldn't be a company anymore. And so that, I think, putting in the amount of work and sort of passion that we had into it, facing that reality of, if this one thing doesn't happen, then it all sort of blows up. I think for me, was probably a low point.
I think a cool high point is just the first time someone uses the product.
Yeah.
That's not a friend or family member. Because I think it's very easy to be like, oh mom, check this out. And she's like, I love it, greatest thing in the world. And you're like, that's cool. And I'm like, I've never used it. But having someone completely random actually use it on a regular basis is really, really awesome. Because you're just like, this person is getting something valuable out of this, is investing their time, is investing their energy, and I like completely created this. And yeah, so I think that's, I think for us that was like a very rewarding feeling, just seeing random people in random countries start using this thing. And we're like, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have like a checklist of like what you needed to start like the company? So like one's money, like did you need like, a place or like, I don't know, is there anything
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So we didn't go about it in like a traditional like checklist way. I think one thing we did have was sort of a sense of how much money we personally had and sort of how long that would take us, and then realizing sort of what the costs were. So we had sort of a financial outlook on it. And as far as space goes, we were talking, so we know Robin we were both in this sort of incubator accelerator space in Palo Alto. And so I think, yeah, between us, it's like we knew there were certain things that had to get done by a certain time. So it was like finding space, and we need to raise funding by this point, and we want to, launch at this date. So we did have this sort of, collective idea of when certain things needed to happen, but it was never like a.
I mean, there are some like nitty-gritty things of just like you need to be incorporated, you need to get a lawyer. There's a lot of these things that are just like the result of building, like making it actually a company. And I think there's like a difference between like there's like a product and then there's a company. And I think oftentimes you can just on your own as like a person just build a cool product and like that's a thing. But at a certain point, if you want to make money off of that product, or if you want to not be like totally legally liable for things that happen on that, like there's a lot of, at some point you need to make that product into a company, otherwise there's going to be a lot of issues. And when you do that transition, it's kind of a costly transition to do because you have to do a lot of stuff. And that's when you have to like make it an actual company on paper and register it in Delaware and bring in lawyers and stuff like that. And it's not, things have streamlined that to date where there are a lot of lawyers now that will do stuff relatively for free or will defer costs. And some of that stuff you can probably even try to do online if you want to. But that's the kind of thing where, talking to like a mentor, having someone that's done it before, they'll be able to give you tips that will save you money and will make the process less painful. And, the goal with that is to like, not necessarily optimize it to make it perfect, it's just to make it a small distraction as possible from what you're actually doing, which is like building something that people hopefully want.
It's also good if you have other friends that are in the midst of starting companies, just to sort of make sure that you catch up with them and sort of exchange what you're working on, what you're thinking about. Because I think in some ways I can help you both learn when you get to sort of the crossroads they're at, like how you might think about that rather than just approaching a problem sort of fresh for the first time. And also they can be great resources to sort of that idea moving forward with.
Was there like a point when you were designing the product and getting it ready for like the markets where you guys kind of had to take like a turn for somewhere you weren't planning on going before with the product or just otherwise with the company?
Yeah, definitely a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, like we've kind of been very open to pivoting. Like one thing I was kind of talking about a little bit earlier, Charlie, was I think our initial approach was let's just solve everything technically and let's kind of remove all user input whatsoever, and we'll do like better algorithms and better machine learning and better data processing. And because of that, we're going to be able to figure out more exactly where you are and what you're doing because we have all this wonderful data. And we have so much data, like of course we can't go wrong. And I think what we found was like that's really, really hard. Going from 80% or 90% to 100% is exponential. And the amount of effort to put in just explodes. And we've also found that users actually don't mind doing a little bit of work. And if you frame it as like them having ownership over the work, they're willing to put a little bit of effort into it. So I think we went away from saying our goal is to be 100% perfect for the user doing nothing, to our goal is to do 90% of the work for the user, and then have them tweak the last little bit. And then that way we can be a lot more efficient as like an engineering team, and then they can also feel like they're part of the process. So that's like one thing that we found out pretty quickly, like talking to users. We've had features we had to cut off. I think one big thing is like it's very easy to like feature creep where you keep on adding new things and you say, I want this thing to blink and like have LEDs and vibrate and I'm gonna have 20 like subpages. And like sometimes that's nice early on because you can have a bunch of stuff on there and you can figure out which thing people like. But it's also sometimes the case where if you have so much stuff it gets very confusing and so none of those things work really well. The user can't really figure out what they're supposed to focus on. And so as a result, it's just kind of like this mess, and they get in there and they get frustrated and turn away. And so one thing that we've been kind of doing on this relaunch is saying, all right, people don't use this, let's just cut it. And like, that's awful, that sucks, because like you invested like 100 hours of your life building this, and the last thing you want to do is cut this away. But you know that if you don't cut that away, all the other stuff you built, which you really like, is going to be worse.
Any other questions? Yeah, thanks guys.
Cool, thank you.